My name is Dan Sutherland. I am one of the founders of Self. Fraud is an awesome business to be in. It's lightly regulated. It's very lightly policed. It's untaxed. It shows double-digit growth. And the known market has a GDP of nearly $6 trillion. That's over 8 times the size of the drug trade. I'm not saying this because I think you should pivot, but because this is the scale of the problem the security industry is trying to tackle. And the way they're doing it clearly isn't working. At Self, we realized that there's one problem at the heart of all of it. Knowing who someone is underpins every personal and business decision we make. We hire trades on recommendation. We use the realtor our friend used. We go to the restaurant someone we trust said was good. But online, we can't know who someone is, whether we should trust them if it's okay. The uncertainty of not knowing is what fraudsters and cybercriminals exploit. Self changes that. A person can use Self to prove in real time that they are a specific human, not just a proxy for identity like some keys. Knowing who someone is unlocks believing in the credentials they carry and the permissions that they claim to have. It's not just about protecting companies and users from the bad actors who've always been there. It also helps effective businesses go beyond compliance with regulations, proving not just quarterly, but with every interaction that they have established the identity of their user. Today's bad actors are supercharged by AI. Telling the difference between a genuine, unique human and an array of bots, AI fakes, compromised accounts is really hard. But AI isn't human. We're an identity company, but the identity we're interested in is about who a person is, not the credentials conferred on them by companies and governments. We take identity from being just data and give it utility. So self-users are able to communicate, authenticate, share information, delegate, transact, sell things, sign documents. A self-account becomes the twin of its user, acting and being the user online. We're going to market in a very traditional way, using sales, initially to target customers in regulated sectors who have a problem we can solve and a large user base they are happy to onboard. Users are our key metric. They drive the revenues we get from customers. In less than 3 weeks, we have closed deals which will onboard 30,000 users and built a pipeline of over 200,000 more. Customers like it because we're transforming user experience, removing barriers to entry, and creating certainty about users and data which can be embedded into every interaction. The commercials are a key to making this work. Biometric auth with the payload of a KYC check for half a cent. That just wouldn't be possible without the architecture of Web3. So how are we doing all this? Our user IDs are created on device, and they live only on the user's phone. A single account per user, accessible across all self-enabled apps on that device, both native and embedded. User ID and data exclusively in the user's control, in their hand, not in the cloud. But we don't stop at individual users. Self can also identify companies, and with our APIs and SDKs, their developers can craft seamless integrations with their existing systems and the Self network. All these interactions are made possible by a decentralized network which will be governed by a foundation to protect it. The network carries all the encrypted communications and messaging between Self entities and is secured by PKI sitting on the air. Users, with an app gated by biometrics, which is a wallet for their credentials and bank accounts and crypto. Organizations leveraging communications and data, both entities able to provably do things through the network like delegate, own, sell, and transact. They are the relationships we have in the physical world brought into the virtual. Let's just look at a couple of examples. Instead of regularly asking users to update KYC, an exchange could store the fact that they've done a KYC check on a user to the user's wallet. The user can then use Self biometrics for authentication, with a payload re-verifying that the user is still the one who passed KYC. A bank could use Self to delegate authority to speak to its customers to an employee. When a customer gets a call from them through Self, they can see on screen that it's the bank calling, and the bank can see that it's the right customer. It's a flow which can't be faked, and there's no need for security questions. Companies can use Self to distribute PII data to their users, cleaning internal data sets of the riskiest information, which would prevent breaches having an impact and would place the remaining data out of the scope of even the toughest regulation, retaining a link through Self's network to the customer and their data. Self is in production beta. Our first products like biometric auth are available now. Our embedded app will be released in Q3 alongside our runtime, which allows autonomous agents to act on behalf of their owners, doing things like persisting the value of smart contracts, allowing social account recovery, and running applications built by an LLM on the fly to solve a problem like booking travel. A system where identity is provably true arms people to resist fraud, signposts AI, and satisfies regulators. Self is bringing Web3 to ordinary users and tackling a real-world problem that has impacted everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Will this prevent me from getting rugged? I don't know. All right, well, hopefully it does. Any questions from the judges? If you might, just introduce yourself real quick. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Lacey from Protocol Labs. Great presentation. Considering that you're going to be housing a lot of sensitive information myself, just curious about like security tooling and features that are currently built into the platform and that you're planning to integrate in order to make sure that it's not exploited.
We hold absolutely no sensitive information. It is only ever on the phone in the user's hand. The only stuff that's inside the network is anything that's in the PKI that we store in there, and there's no identifiable information in that at all.
Great.
Any other questions from judges? And again, just quickly introduce yourself.
Hi, Luke Kerner with Crypto Mondays. So obviously makes a lot of sense. You've got the classic chicken and egg problem, right? How you get somebody to care about getting an identity with you if nobody cares what that identity does, and how do you get somebody to care of what it does if nobody has it?
Yeah, hence the spear phishing, hence going for commercial customers who have user bases where the commercial customers need to enforce getting their users to sign up. So the sign-ups that we have been working on this month are all organizations where they need their users to use this stuff. And so we create forcing functions that are outside of trying to go out to consumers and directly get them to sign up. We go through organizations and their customer base.
Hey, thanks. Paul from Inface. Kind of continuing on the first question. Have you looked at all at partnering with like SOC 2 compliance agencies and folks that are already talking to companies to protect this data?
Yes, we have looked at that. We've looked at partnering also with KYC and AML providers specifically because they also have interesting customer bases. So yeah, that's absolutely interesting. Those things that you just identified are not really verticals that we want to go up into. We're really interested in providing a platform on top of which those kind of organizations can build extra value. Like if you're a company delivering KYC, for example, at the moment, you have to redo the process of checking you a customer every time you get re-requested to do it. Actually with this, the example I gave a second ago, you could expand that out to a KYC provider, might be repeatedly asked to provide KYC assertions, but they could actually re-verify using Self that the user was the same one that did KYC previously, so they would be able to reduce the cost of their service while still maintaining the service.
Hello, Christian from Black Capital. From the beta testing that you were doing, is there a specific sector that you're going after, and if so, why?
Yeah, so the very broad financial services is the bulk of it. We're not going to walk into a tier 1 bank or a startup, but we will. So it's crypto companies on the one hand through to small fintechs and things. We're based out of London. There's a strong fintech community for us to engage with there. Part of my team's in Lisbon, and there's also a good tech community there. So there's quite a good way of kind of directly engaging with parts of that community. The same with actually things like InsurTech. There's quite a lot of interesting stuff to do there. We're looking essentially at anyone who has a regulation issue at the moment, but from a go-to-market perspective, the focus is on fintech.
Yeah, this is Jonathan from Republic. So you said it costs half a cent to do a KYC, right? I mean, it is significantly cheaper than what I know. It's usually $2 to $3 because it's very manual looking at the passport, a lot of pictures. Can you explain a little bit more, like the cost differences. I know you're doing biometric information. Maybe you can give us more information, like how you handle those data, what type of biometric information you're looking for, these type of things.
Yeah, sure. So what we're doing is allowing the user to create an account for themselves on the device, and then make it possible for them to reuse the information that they've previously checked. So first of all, we are not a KYC AML provider. That's a regulated space that I don't want to go into right now because it's going up into the vertical. But what we're able to do is use facial biometrics, behavioral biometrics. The user builds themselves a web of trust over time. And web of trust in this context actually works because you know who the parties to the web of trust are. And a combination of those factors allow us to get greater and greater degrees of security and surety about who the user is. It's all about veracity, and it's still ultimately about the probability that this is the right person, but we have the ability to go check the biometrics, the foundational biometrics. So for example, we can pull the key signed photo from biometric passport. That's been signed by the passport authority. We can compare that image to a series of images that a user captures of themselves every time they use the biometric auth feature in the app. And every time they use that, they're creating essentially a compound image that allows us to compare the person with the data that the person's been able to capture about themselves. So over time, what you're building is a greater and greater probability that it's the right person. The app is essentially learning its user.
Great. So we've seen, I think, for many years, a lot of passports for identity, but as much as people want ease of use across all of these different applications and users say that security matters, there's a lot of resistance to downloading a app, just there's in general. So how are you thinking about, I know you're working with partners, but are they going to have concerns about being able to get their own customers to take that extra step and to upload all that information? How are you going to reduce that barrier?
Yeah, so Time made me a bit subtle in the presentation about a few things, and one of them was this. So Self works off two different kinds of app. We have a native app which allows people to do lots of stuff. That's great, but it's very useful at this stage. But the majority of the user journeys are going to come in through embedded Self. So that is baked into other people's applications. They don't even need to know Self's part of it. But what happens once the thing has been created is that there is an app inside that contains the personally identifiable, personally relevant information to that user, which can be inherited by anything else that also has embedded Self built into it. So you essentially do this once, and then you have the access to doing it for whatever you need.
Great. One last question from the judges. No, we're good. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.